What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Sherlock Season 4, Episode 1, The Six Thatchers. So I've been really looking forward to getting back into Sherlock because, frankly, it's way too long that this show has to wait. I don't know why they do it either. I mean, now it makes sense because Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch are both really popular, so they're doing movies and stuff. But why did they start off doing, the first two seasons took 2 years to make as well, so I don't know. But yeah, 2 years in the making. It feels like every single season has a year without it, and then the next year it's back on. But either way, it's back. And this is all coming after Moriarty sends that random message to everybody saying, "You miss me." And they're asking why. They don't know why. And then if you saw it was sort of like a movie for Sherlock. But it's almost like it was furthering the story a little bit, but it's almost more like Sherlock's mind figuring out how is it possible that Moriarty sent out this message if he's dead. And so that was the whole thing there. We saw him trying to figure out that, but we also saw that they are giving him a pardon to come back and stop Moriarty. So overall, I mean, it really is an interesting episode, even though the whole Moriarty thing is still a secret. We still don't know exactly what's going on there. I just like the story for this one. So it starts off with, we see Sherlock is talking to, well, actually Mycroft is talking to these people. I guess they're working for MI6, I think? I can't really remember who they were, but apparently they changed the video of Sherlock shooting the guy in the head from last season to make it look like a sniper shot him. So now Sherlock is completely in the clear. He's completely, fine, not charged with anything. And so, that's a good way to start. But part of the problem does happen, and part of my biggest problem with this episode happens in this first scene. The humor in this episode was not the Sherlock humor I'm used to. Most of the time, when I think about the humor in Sherlock, I expect it to be Sherlock condescending other people and just being a total jackass to everybody. And they still had that. I mean, the scene where he's talking to the baby is honestly probably the best example of the good humor of the show mixed with the bad humor in this episode. Because we see Sherlock is talking, and instantly he's talking to the baby, but he's sitting there trying to reason with this baby because she keeps throwing her rattle away, and he's trying to explain, if you want the rattle, don't throw it. But he's doing it in the Sherlock way. He's going way over the top trying to explain it. But then the bad humor is in the fact that it's kind of silly. I mean, the baby throws the rattle and hits him in the face, and that's part of the humor of this episode, and it's not the Sherlock humor. In the very first scene, he's high as a kite and acting like a total... It's one thing to see him acting like a child. We've seen him act like a child before, but it's been more the Sherlock type of child, where he's an adult, but he's pouting to get his way. This one, he's acting like an ADHD kid, and he's just running everywhere. He's like, "Oh look, are these cookies?" Oh, and eating them and acting all goofy and stuff, and it just didn't feel like the Sherlock humor. And they had a little bit of that thrown in there. It wasn't enough for me to ruin the episode or to ruin the humor of the episode, because there were enough moments of Sherlock acting like Sherlock that I still enjoyed the humor. But just, it seemed weird that was in there. Those moments of just, let's act like Goofy this time instead of serious and kind of funny Sherlock. But enough about the humor. Let's get on to the actual story itself. For this one, we start off with Sherlock. He's solving these random cases, waiting for Moriarty's next move, and then he hears about this case that sounds interesting, and so he goes to it. And honestly, it was a pretty interesting case because apparently the son called his parents on a Skype call, but it was a fake Skype call at first, and then asked his dad to go out to the car and take a picture of a Power Rangers thing on there. And just, he wanted to surprise his father because he was actually in town, and he ended up having I think he said he had a seizure and then died in the car. And so nobody found his body, and then later a drunk driver was escaping from the police, ran into the car, happened to blow it up, and that's whenever the son's body got found. And so it started off as like, how did the son get there? Was he dead the whole time? What's going on? And it was a very interesting resolution to the case because, you know, you don't really expect that. You expect, oh, the parents probably had him killed or something and faked the Skype call, or the mom did it and somehow faked it in front of the dad. You expect something along those lines, and so the fact that it turned out to be as tragic as this was kind of not just emotional, but also a very interesting twist because I didn't really see it coming. But then on top of that, Sherlock notices that a bust of Margaret Thatcher has been removed or stolen or broken or something along those lines, and so he's asking about them like it's a big deal, and then not really sure why. Well, I think it was a couple days after that day, another bust of Margaret Thatcher ends up broken, and so that's whenever it starts to be like, okay, so something's going on here. Is this the Moriarty plan and going into effect? And you see Sherlock, his mind is really racing now. He's like, okay, so what's going on? What's the plan here? And so we start to see the more and more buskets get broken, and then finally there's one left. So Sherlock goes to the house, he stops the burglar in his place, and honestly, I thought I was right along with Sherlock at this point. Now, I was. I did understand his reasoning. I understood what his thinking was because Interpol had this case that Mycroft was talking to Sherlock about at the beginning of the episode, where a black pearl was stolen, and of course Sherlock was just like, whatever, who cares? Well, as he noticed these busts are being broken and they all came from the same place, and it's where I think it was close to where the black pearl was stolen. That was his thought, that was my thought. As it turns out, he starts fighting the burglar, finally breaks the bust, and inside is a jump drive with the same initials as the one that Mary gave to John, containing her history as a spy or assassin or whoever she was before. So all of that was her history on that drive. As we come to find out, she was actually a member of an assassin team, and that jump drive actually contains all of their histories, all four of them, their aliases, their pictures, and everything. And this guy that was trying to find it is trying to track down Mary using the drive, and so that's why he wants to get it back, because he hid his drive in one of the Margaret Thatcher busts. And so at this point, I'm just like, I have no clue where this is going anymore. At first I was like, I get it. I understand where it's going. I don't understand what Moriarty has to do with this, but I get it. I get it. I get it. And then that threw its head in there, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm going to stop trying to figure out, because I don't know anymore. And ultimately, it turns out to be a fairly interesting case. We see that apparently they were on a mission, and then all of them got, like, the mission changed somehow, and then everybody died except for her. And this guy, AJ, was actually captured and was told that the English woman betrayed them, so he instantly thinks it's Mary. And then it turns out later that the secretary for one of the ladies in charge was actually the one that was doing secret stuff behind the scenes. And so whenever she saw that she had a chance to take out a woman who in an earlier scene had said, oh yeah, I have information to take them down, it turns out that that woman had information on the secretary, so she changed the orders for the assassin team to make sure that that woman died. And then on top of that, the assassin team would die in the process as well. And so she thought she had fixed everything. She had covered every hole, covered every possible chance of it coming back to haunt her. But unfortunately, she didn't realize that Mary was still alive, as well as AJ. So, all of that is very interesting. I love how they weave the story. I loved how they told it in such a flowing manner. You're going from one place to the next, to the next, and next. It was never like you track down this way and it's like, oh, okay, well, that has nothing to do with this anymore, so now you're tracking down this way. No, it all connects, and I love how they do that with the show. Even there's one scene where Sherlock figures out that it's the secretary because he's thinking in his head about the case, and all of a sudden he remembers Mary saying earlier in the show, because she used to be a secretary, she's like, secretaries see everything, and I'm just like, it's the secretary, I get it. It makes sense now, because that's what he's thinking at the time. And honestly, I think that's what I really love about the show in general, is that you get to see Sherlock and how he makes the deductions. You get to see how he works. They show you his mind. Okay, that wall looks a bit different. Something's there. And then this rug, something off about this rug, like it was changed recently. And you just see his mind going through all the things. You see him picking up on the little details that nobody else is picking up on. The one that I really enjoyed is the fact, I guess it was John and Mary, their new home. I don't know, they sort of rushed through the first part. That is a little bit of a problem with it. The first part was very, like, hectic and rushed, and you had to really pay attention to understand everything that was going on. But John and Mary are at their house. I think it's their new house. And you see Sherlock is just sitting there on his phone the entire time, like, taking down case after case because he has all these cases to catch up on. And you see him, like, sitting there on his phone, and all of a sudden, up at the wall, it's like newly plastered wall. Like, the brother is probably the killer. If the dog can't swim, the neighbor's the murderer. And I'm just like, he's figuring all of this stuff out right there. You know, his senses are picking up on it, his mind is figuring it out, and you get to see that in action. So seeing that scene where he's on the bridge and he's going through everything that happened with the bus, with the drive, and then Mary saying, you know, secretaries see everything, that is everything going through his mind, and you get to experience that firsthand. And I think that's really cool. So we get to that final scene, and we see the secretary is a little bit crazy. She thinks that she has the upper hand, and so Mary tries to step in and do something, and she pulls out a gun, and then Sherlock starts goading her and just leading her on and just, you know, calling out everything about her, saying that, you know, you're probably a widow, you have cats because you couldn't fill the void with anything but animals. And you see Mary's just like, you know, Sherlock, stop. Well, as he's doing this, I'm like, okay, he has a plan, right? And then all of a sudden, Mycroft enters with Lestrade and other policemen. But you see that the woman's not intimidated, and she's ready to shoot. And none of the guys have their guns out. I'm like, wait, what? Why is nobody ready? Why is nobody ready to stop her? And you see that she's not willing to back down. And Lestrade's just like, don't do anything you'll regret. And she's just like, nah, I don't think so. And then shoots at Sherlock. And at this point, I'm like, okay, he has to have a plan, right? Like, he wouldn't just run in here, start goading her to shoot him and not have a plan. Well, Mary jumps in front of him. She ends up shot. And then she dies in John's arms. And I'm just like, there's no plan. There's no plan whatsoever. That's weird. Why didn't he have a plan? I don't understand. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like, to me, Sherlock is one of the most prepared people. Like, even at the end of last season, when he shot that guy, he made sure John had his pistol because he knew if there was no other option, if all of his other options didn't pan out, the very last option for him would be to kill the guy. Because he knew there was no other way. You know, if nothing else worked out, that was his final plan. Here, it feels like he just walks in without a plan. It feels like he just walks in just like, oh, she may have a gun, she may try to defend herself, but I'm ready for this. And then Mary ends up dying because of it. And you can kind of understand John's frustration with Sherlock. I hope they don't drag this out too long because, you know, ultimately, even though Sherlock was sort of responsible, you know he's not really the one that pulled the trigger, so John's frustration with him, while justified for now, shouldn't be an eternal grudge to where he just never talks to him again. So hopefully it sort of picks up a little bit and it's not as stretched out as it could be. But there's one scene that just sort of made up for that, the fact that Sherlock came in unprepared. He's talking to Mrs. Hudson, and he says if there's ever a time whenever I'm acting too confident or too cocky, just mention the name, and I can't remember the secretary's last name now, but he wants her to mention her last name. And all of a sudden it made sense to me. That's why he went in unprepared. That's why he went in with no plan at all, no plan if she had a gun, because he was so cocky, he was so confident that he had everything figured out, he didn't think to plan for what if she has a gun, what do you do then? And it ended up costing Mary her life. And he wants to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so he wants Mrs. Hudson to remind him of it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm still not entirely convinced that Sherlock would not have had a plan, or that the police wouldn't have done anything to try to stop her. You know, they all show up and none of them have their guns out. A little bit maybe coincidental, but I don't know. I think that scene right there sort of shows that he does feel responsible. He does understand that he made a mistake. And you gotta wonder if that mistake has anything to do with what's going on with Moriarty. If that is sort of what caused the mistake to happen, because he's so focused on that, because he's so focused on, okay, what am I going to do about Moriarty? He doesn't plan for everything now because there's a section of his brain focusing on that. I'll be interested to see if that has anything to do with it, but all in all, it's a really good episode. Where are the problems, though? Because there are a couple. One, like I said, the beginning was very rushed. It felt like they were trying to get through all of this information. The cases are not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when it comes to Mary and John's baby, when it comes to them, I think, buying a new house. I'm not sure if that's what it was. It felt like all of that stuff having to do with their life was also rushed. And that shouldn't be rushed. That should be something that's focused on, because that's a big deal. Them having a baby, them buying a new house, all of that's kind of a big deal. And rushing through that to make time for, scenes like we see Sherlock playing a game with a kid. I don't know. It feels like you could extend that and then take away some of the more pointless scenes that were supposed to be humorous. The other problem I had was with the AJ guy that ended up still being alive. It felt like that could have been a very interesting part of the episode, but as it turned out, after that fight with Sherlock, Mary decides to drug Sherlock and then runs away. Sherlock tracks her down because he planted a bug on the junk drive, which, that all is exactly what I expect. But then somehow he tracks Sherlock down. We don't know how. He never explains it. He just says he followed Sherlock. And then there's a little bit of a gunfight. Eventually, Mary and him come to a bit of a standoff. And then he gets shot from behind by some cop, and then he dies. And that's the end of his story. I just felt like it was a waste. I felt like he could have been a very good character. I thought, it felt like he deserved more than just, he gives that last piece of information about him being tortured and hearing that the English woman betrayed him. And that's it. I think you could have done more with him. I think there could have been more of an emotional moment between him and Mary. But for him to just die instantly, there's not even the last word spoken between them. It feels like a waste to me. And then the final thing to talk about is, of course, the whole Mary leaving a DVD. This is not a big deal, but it is kind of cliche. I don't know if it's just me, but her leaving the DVD, first of all, entitled Miss Me, I'm like, okay, here we go. Now we're going to find out more about Moriarty. And then it's Mary. And she's just like, I'm leaving you one last case. I'm like, let me guess, it's going to be either A, take care of the baby, B, take care of the baby and John, or C, something along the lines of help John. And the case is save John. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Cliche, seen it done before, and you didn't have to do this. I don't know, it feels like if you truly want to make it more emotional, make it to where Sherlock decides he's going to do that on his own. It would be a bit of character growth for him, because for the first time, he'd be thinking about someone besides himself. And even then, it probably would still be a bit selfishly motivated. The fact that he doesn't have John in his life anymore would probably be enough motivation for him to go help him. But the fact that you just sort of threw Mary in there to already say what we're all thinking, help John, save John, it felt unneeded. It felt like extra time that you could have devoted elsewhere. And on top of that was a bit of a cock tease, because you're just like, oh, Moriarty DVD, just kidding, it's Mary. Suck it. It's a bit frustrating. And ultimately we don't get anything more about Moriarty in this episode, so maybe the next episode will have it. Like I said, this only happens once every 2 years, so there are 3 episodes in a season. They're all an hour and a half long. I hope the next 2 episodes are more about Moriarty, not about just random stuff, because, yeah, I want this to be an interesting 3 episodes. I don't want it to be the first one's interesting, the second one's filler, the third one's interesting, and then that's kind of been the formula for the first 3 seasons. But we'll see where it's going from here. It is kind of sad, the fact that Mary's dead now, because the performances in this, of course, are brilliant, and seeing Martin Freeman break down is very sad. But I think that's the final thing I'm going to talk about. The performances are great. As far as the camera work, I think it's really well done. Again, Sherlock has always had sort of a unique style to it that I don't really see in any other TV shows. You know, it almost feels like it is a movie. Obviously, an hour and a half, it makes it feel even more like a movie, but even the camera work feels like it's movie quality. So I've always liked that. Just how the story feels, I think, is really well done. So it's a good start to the season. I hope it gets even better from here. Hope the mistakes sort of get cropped out next time, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you like and dislike about this episode? Let me know. We can talk about, discuss, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Sherlock reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.